Hello, I'm Valentina Kozlova, former principal dancer of the Bolshoi Ballet and New York City Ballet, also co-founder of VKIBC competition and founder of Valentina Kozlova Dance Foundation. In the program Pulse on Dance and Science of Movement. Let's get started. So I have a pleasure to have Amy Brandt with us today, former professional dancer and editor-in-chief of Pointe magazine. Hi.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you. So I have a few questions, Amy. Obviously, as an editor of Pointe magazine, that you're responsible of shaping a dancer's story into life for a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is that how do you manage between journalism and, for example, social media?
Oh, like how do we
you choose?
compete with
yeah,
it?
yeah. It's basically how, because the relationship now, like everything is about, not everything is about, but it's a lot about social media.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, when we're telling a story, the nice thing about the kinds of stories that we do, like a profile of a dancer, is that we can really kind of go a lot deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, you often get a short snippet or like a very kind of curated snippet of someone's experience,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's backstage or, getting ready, or their daily life or whatnot. When we're writing a story, we have to really talk to the person, and I guess they have to give up a little bit of control, right? When you're working with a journalist, because the journalist is talking to you and shaping your story. But, we can go a little deeper into their different types of experiences and in their artistic process too. How they approach roles, how they approach their everyday life. We can also talk to other people who know them and to get their take kind of from the outside and things and bring kind of a fuller picture.
So it's not as flat as social media, let's put it that way.
Yeah. There's
I hope I'm not criticized on saying that, because I social media is good, but there's sometimes questionable things like
right.
YouTube, like we're talking about. So in that case, that I completely understand you. How do you choose your stories? It's like what attracts you? Is there like a new production, news revival, or somebody's new on stage or choreographer? Like, how do you choose actually?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we're covering like ballets, like news story, like a performance preview, we do prioritize brand new things. So a world premiere, or like a revival of something, or a tour, or a company that hasn't been here in a long time, things like that. We'll usually prioritize for like news items. And then as far as dancers, when it comes to our cover story, so it's interesting because we're sort of a sister publication to Dance Magazine. And so we're kind of competing for a lot of the same readers. So we have to differentiate ourselves. So Pointe is not always, but we kind of tend to feature that dancer that is just about to take off. So they've been, maybe they're still in the core, or they've just been promoted to soloist, or they're about to get promoted to principal, and people are kind of talking about them and noticing them, but they haven't had like a super long career yet. So that's kind of whereas Dance Magazine kind of does the more mature artist, and also different genres of dance and things like that.
Yeah, different genres.
Yeah.
Like there's more of a different genre now than a ballet dance magazine I've seen. It's changed for quite some time. Well, I have been working. Actually, I finished writing my own book.
Oh wow!
Yes.
I did not know that.
It's a little news for the moment, and it's basically a story of my own journey through ballet dance and life, and also a reflection on transformation and artistic freedom, because I do come from completely different world, a different society, and so what I've seen here, it's still with young girls' eyes, like it was a huge difference. So I'm not going to give any details yet, but as I was writing, basically a question or questions comes to me quite deep, like what makes the dancer's story to be told? What is it exactly? How for example, public relations and Pointe magazine in that sense. How do you see how you actually present voices of dancers, for example? How does it happen?
Yeah. Do you mean like what do we choose to focus on, sort of? Yeah, that's a good question too, because dancers all have different experiences and stories, and sometimes it's something new that's happened, right? Like they're starting a new scholarship foundation or something, and that kind of is a newsy reason to focus on them right now. A lot of times for me, I'm interested in what makes their story relatable, like to the person who's reading it. So a lot of our readers are young dancers themselves, and sometimes it's not as, when you read about someone and their life just seems perfect, it's hard to relate. But if there's something like a struggle or a challenge, or something that they've had to kind of overcome, that is often like a reader can find themselves in that moment, right? Or at least relate to them.
Relate. So does it mean that you're looking for example, for dancer's story beyond the stage?
Yeah, sometimes.
Because you want to know background and what actually happened, and I think that does become more human. So also another very big thought that I have, for example, when I was in Bolshoi, and when I entered Bolshoi, there were teachers with big names who were prior to that were big stars themselves, like ballet dancers, and then they became big teachers, and we're talking about Galina Ulanova, Semyonova, Marina Semyonova, and Raisa Struchkova, and so on. So their generation and my generation and generation after me, we continue to have legacy, so we do remember the history. We do remember who the times even before revolution, who were dancers were, who were teachers were. So what I do find here now, also we have one generation, the next generation, and dancers unfortunately do not remember history, or they simply don't know the history. So how to get into masses of dance world to actually say ballet didn't happen today.
Right.
So there was there's a whole story how it began, and what is so important to treasure that. Do you think that a Pointe magazine into that?
I think we could do a much better job of that, actually.
Okay.
We've done we did a really fun story a long time ago, where I think we took 3 dancers and we traced their legacy, basically their like ballet family tree. So their teachers and their teachers' teachers, and it was really amazing to see
the journey.
Yes, that was such a fun story. We've done some other things. Sometimes we'll profile like a historical dancer, or if there's like a museum exhibit, we'll do something in that sense, or a book. But yeah, I do think we could do a better job, honestly, of bringing more historical stories to the forefront. Because I do agree. I think a lot of dancers don't always understand, what came before them and everything. Even just recently, like with Push Comes to Shove at ABT, and reading the New York Times article about how that came to be, the interview with Twyla, was really interesting. And then to go and watch the performance and see, the
actuals.
Yeah, it was really neat. And if you don't know about it, then you can't put it into context when you see it. So yeah, I do think it is important.
It's important. For example, that yesterday I was teaching one class, and I do have a good connection with dancers, and besides that I have private practice. I said it was kind of like interesting day before Halloween, like everybody's in a crazy mood, and so I said, okay, what would you like to do? Which variation you want to do? And they said, let's have Giselle. I said, Giselle Act 1. They're like, they show me the steps. The steps.
Right.
And I said, this is Act 1. Giselle's solo. So imagine that's what I was thinking already.
Right.
And so they started to do, I said, okay, wait a minute. That's not about punching and extension. It's the lightness, you have to know character. And then I started to talk about character. And then also in the ballet, the most important thing is that as much as difficult you making your technique, not you making, you have a technical difficulties, that you have to make to look like everything is so easy and light. And that takes a lot of hours and weeks and months to achieve, when finally it looks like nothing, and yet you're doing a crazy thing. And I said that, and it comes into character Giselle. So what do you know about Giselle? Silence. So the story.
Right.
I mean, it is a famous ballet, wasn't created like even in this century.
Yeah.
And that's what I find, the lack of history. Although some schools and big schools, they started to have dance history occasionally or not occasionally. The problem is they take in YouTube fragments,
right,
and they show. And I thought, okay, it would be interesting if I was like little fly on the wall, and I asked questions. Okay, who was the first ballerina on Pointe? Which country and what ballet she does? I just wonder if the teachers know the answer. I'm sure they don't. So
yeah, I mean, it does start in the classroom. If you're teaching a variations class and you're just teaching the steps, but you're not filling in like who the character is and where this dance comes in the context of the story, and the time that it was made and what that meant, and it's hard as a dancer to know how to interpret that,
and I think it's the tradition, like what we're saying, and the legacy. We got this, it was passed like from generation to generation. So obviously if Galina Ulanova teaches Giselle, she was incredible, Giselle. So is my coach Raisa Struchkova. They tell you the substance, and it's not about the jumps and the steps and making certain arms. It's just like you're almost not existing, and so that's Act 2.
Right.
But Act 1, it's naivete, for example, and if you take this role, what I see a lot, and the audience reacts actually quite nicely when Giselle gets crazy, mad, and that's considered that the madness of Giselle, but it's not the story.
Right.
The story is that she had a heart condition. She was young, a naive girl who fell in love with this man, and he basically betrayed her. And as a young, innocent soul, she doesn't understand how it happened, and that's why the music goes slow, and she just basically asking herself question. But he told me this. He told me he loved me. So that's how that's how we were taught to portray. So when I see that somebody interpreting Giselle, for example, ripping the clothes and your hair and all of that, and I'm like, she wasn't crazy.
Right.
She was just in love, young girl in love without any experience. So I think that it's very important, and again, over and over, I talk about the same thing. There are many good teachers in the US, for example. They give good classes, so I'm told. And but I don't see coaching. And that's a tradition, I think, does not exist. Maybe it did exist when I came. Actually, I'm sure it did exist. But now with YouTube and social media, what dancers do, they see whoever famous at the moment, does this variation, and so they're trying to do that, to copy, and that's sad. That makes me sad, because it's not the approach really to be. So what do you think about dance critics?
What do I think about them? Well, I mean, I think that, I think it's very sad what's happening to them, because they're being just dismissed, cut out of, the newspaper world. A lot of them are just starting their own blogs or their own Substacks, or it's kind of turned into like you volunteer your time to do these things, and it's very hard to find paying work for dance criticism. Our magazines don't do reviews anymore, but I do think it's important, because it creates a record of what happened, and a good critic will know how to approach something with analysis, and can bring that historical context in. As a former dancer myself, I have certainly, seen bad reviews, and it feels really horrible, and
I'll talk about it. I have my story to tell. Yeah,
I have one. And there was one critic in particular who always had something backhanded to say about the company I was dancing with, and it was almost like we almost approached it like a joke, like, what's she gonna say this time, but so it's I think it's necessary, but sometimes
it hurts.
As a dancer, it
hurts.
Very painful.
So what do you think? What do you consider from point of view like a good critic? What is it? What goes into be a good critic?
I think a good critic looks mostly at the work itself, and spends less time picking a dancer apart, right? And I mean, it's hard because people have opinions, and
sure.
Sometimes, and people have biases. They
right.
Their own
dancers, favorites.
Yeah. And then sometimes I'll watch something and I'm like, oh, I know this is gonna get a bad review, but look at the audience, they're all on their feet, and so it doesn't always reflect what how
That's
it
true.
moved people, a critic's opinion. Especially because, and I say this as someone who sees a lot of dance, I go to a ton of performances just to kind of have an eye on things. You do get a little bit I feel like I've seen this before, this kind of choreography or this idea, it feels stale or whatever, and I think you know, with a critic, they see so much that does, because if they don't feel like something's original, then you know, they'll go after it a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if they can be, I appreciate a critic who acknowledges the work that went into the performance, because as a dancer, I understand how much work and how much emotional, like, how important emotionally it is to the people behind the team, the whole creative team, the choreographer, the dancers, the costume designers. It's so much work and a lot of emotional labor too. And so when things are just like dismissed, like, I don't really respect that.
It's
so
hurtful.
much. Yeah,
It's very hurtful. Do you think that critics should have not just obviously knowledge of art and dance, but maybe former dancers? Would it help somewhere?
I think so. And if they're not former dancers, they really need to understand dance and dance technique. I mean, you can usually tell, I can usually tell when I'm reading something, and it's usually not in one of the major, maybe like a smaller local paper. You can see that, you can tell that the person maybe did not dance before, just the way they describe steps, like spins and leaps or something, you know, as opposed to
It's a very different language. When I came here, people started to, even big names started to use words like that. I was just looking, because we speak the ballet language is French, right? So I was like almost saying, what's that?
Yeah.
You know, I have actually interesting, not very close relationship, but I have sort of story about critics. Like once I came here, there were major critics, Clive Barnes and Anna Kisselgov, Jack Anderson, and Jennifer Danning, and so on. So all in all, that they were good or great reviews. But the fact is that I personally didn't read. I only read and got newspaper when somebody told me, oh, did you see you've got good review? and then I will run and get newspaper. So I have this good review. So if there were bad reviews, I'm not aware.
Yeah,
so
that's probably good.
So that made my life very good. And one critic, Jack Anderson, he really liked me and his reviews, and I never met critics when I danced, any of them. So I was dancing with New York City Ballet, and it was my first performance of Firebird. So I worked on, of course I understand the Russian fairy tale and all of it, and after I premiered, Jack Anderson writes a review that he was surprised, but he expected more of me. And I'm like, I know he likes me,
right?
Like, so, but I was experienced enough to understand, and I read this message, so to speak, in a review type, and I was not upset, and I thought, interesting. So I guess if someone likes me but expected something more from me, I guess I wasn't strong enough to deliver my message. I have to rethink, and probably change, have a different interpretation, not changing the steps, but interpretation. And I understood what probably my mistake was, because I was, Swan Lake, my first performance ever was full length, Swan Lake in Russia and so on. I've done Swan Lake, I don't know, thousands of times. So I was the bird. And I guess I presented Firebird as a broken bird who needs help, while Firebird is actually, it's like Russia called the land of firebirds, meaning that you never been captured.
Okay.
You don't allow it, so you're intriguing, and there's a mystery of that. So even if the arms are the same, but it should be slightly different interpretation, the way it's two words but they're not alike.
Right.
And I really thought about, and I created like interesting arms again without changing choreography. So when I did my second Firebird performance, that was very, very good review. And years later, I was attending some black tie party, and next to me was sitting Jack Anderson. And for all those years I danced, I never met him. And so we talked about this episode, and I said, I really thank you, because Firebird's one leg, it's the bird, but it's a different bird. And that's how I consider. And interesting, Amy, was that at least in New York City Ballet, they always consider me like to be a Firebird. So that it's kind of became my signature, actually, as a matter of fact. So I think by saying this, what I see dancers, and especially young dancers, they're fragile. And if they don't understand sometimes that critics, good critics, let's put that way, they actually, first of all, it's their own view, number one. Number two, maybe they suggest that it didn't come as strong as it should be. So dancers, young as dancer is, should understand it's not criticism, but actually it's a help to probably to think. But of course there are some critics who simply just kill the dancer or choreography or choreographer without, as you mentioned, understanding how much it goes into all of that. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I never had too many reviews that specifically mentioned my name, because I most of my career I was in the corps, but kind of a senior corps dancer, doing a lot of demi-soloist stuff, things like that, and occasional soloist or principal role here and there. But like, there was one time at Milwaukee Ballet, we did an all Tudor program, and Sally Wilson came and staged it, and she really liked me, and I was only an apprentice at the time, and she gave me some nice roles. I think, I don't know how much the older company members appreciated that, but like, it was like a big deal for me. And Clive Barnes came. I think it was Clive Barnes. I should double check that. But I think because it was a Tudor program, and I remember he mentioned, we talked about the dancers in general, and I remember he mentioned they're very talented apprentices. Like, yes, point for me. But then he says, I think some of the casting was a little too youthful, or like youthfully oriented, and I was like, oh.
Clive.
Right. I think it was him. Maybe it was. I have to double check. And I remember kind of being like, oh, but thinking about it now, I'm like, yeah, like I probably was too young for some of this, or I, danced young, because
I respected Clive Barnes. So when I met him, well, I was also young at the time. Really liked him. Well, at the time it was like a really great era with critics, and in general that, as you said, basically they don't exist.
Well, and another thing I want to bring up too, that's true for this era now with social media and the internet, is that it's not just the dance critics, there are also message boards where like anybody can weigh in, and that's a dangerous place, and I feel like dancers need to stay away from those, because like Reddit, or there's a couple of other, they're like forums where people can weigh in, and ballet fans and things like that, and sometimes it turns into a pile-on where people are just going after a dancer who they don't know personally, and they're projecting all these things on them and things, and I think that is also could really damage a dancer's self-esteem to look at one of those. I don't know. I thought about doing a story about that, actually.
Actually, it's going to. I think it's a very good story to do it.
Yeah.
It does, especially dancers. They don't have psychological foundation the way we had. Our training was excellent but brutal, but because they also train you how much you can survive the brutality. And it helps you because not everything is like pink roses. If you take every like a big star, I'm sure in the West as well, but in Russia, they're one way or the other, they were like drops down for everyone. And it was difficult to climb. So if you survived that and you went on top, so you have a certain character to basically to survive anything.
Yeah.
And I feel dancers nowadays, they are very fragile, and they simply don't have. They might go to therapist or whatsoever, and but they don't have a psychological foundation from coaches. It's not always like saying, "Oh, you're great, you're great, you're great." You don't have to insult dancers at all.
Right.
But you have to say, "That's not what I meant. No, you didn't do it." And if you're serious enough that you have to do it, there has to be some sort of limit.
Right.
Because I think in the last few years it went like, you're all great, but then you look on stage. That's why so much I like now contemporary dance, because I see there's a creativities, while in a classical dance it's they dance just steps. So speaking of which, what do you think goes beyond the technique for a dancer?
For classical, musicality is a really big one for me. Like that, I just think is such an important quality for teachers to impart on their dancers, for them to insist that they be musical, and to understand music and to understand counting and and all of that, because I think it makes such a big difference. It's so much more exciting to me to see a musical pirouette that tells the story than a lot of spins that finishes late. Oh, that's my phone. That finishes late. I can turn that off real quick if you want.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. I agree, because as I teach class in or variations, for example, and people are turning and turning and turning, and I said music is it finished, so you really have to finish with the music. So they're looking because they're like turning like triple, quadruple, slow, and I said, but music is gone.
Right.
So what are you doing?
I know.
They don't understand. They don't understand. You have to dance to the music.
I remember one time I used to write this advice column for Pointe called Ask Amy, and someone wrote in, they were doing this variation, and so they were like, I really want to get my quads in, like a quadruple pirouette. How do I do that? And she was like describing the actual like passage, and my answer was like, there's no musical time for that to look right. Like, maybe a good solid triple if you can do it, but like there's like, why don't you just make it fit the music? I don't know. I think that's a really important quality, and also just like you talked about earlier, like understanding the role that you're doing, or the emotion, or even just like the story in your head, rather than focusing on the steps and all of that.
So you're going to be judging this year VKIBC, and I'm really I'm very excited about.
Thank you for asking. Actually, I'm very honored.
and also that's what I talk to judges, saying, please don't be impressed by technical aspect, because there's life besides the technique, as in an artist,
Right.
and the musicality. You will be amazed how quite often unmusical dancers dance. And it's not the dancers who are responsible, it's the teachers.
Right.
We're going to the same story, teachers and coaches. So they do become teachers from YouTube or whatever source of information, and then they create their own steps, but no concept of, for example, of musicalities. Like you cannot finish pirouette when music stops, or anywhere you cannot dance to a big split, whatever they call nowadays, grand jeté, and then miss the next beautiful glissade, for example, things like that. So that will be very important part to look at the artistry, and it goes like in the classical department. So I'm excited you're going to be.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Do you have Amy? I think Halloween started too.
Yes.
Right now.
It's
a Halloween. I guess it's like something like celebrating.
Sounds like fireworks.
Yeah, fireworks. Yeah,
It
it is firework. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh gosh, so many. What made you want to start the competition?
Oh, what made me? I was involved as a judge in many different competitions, and prior to that, when I was in Bolshoi, they sent me to different like Varna competition, Moscow competition, several. So you kind of have to pass into next level. It doesn't matter that if director likes you, they test you all the time. So being from competitor, and then much later I became a teacher and coach, and bringing my own students, and then being a judge, I see ins and outs of it, and I see how often that judges looking at different things, like they get impressed by a technical aspect, and or they get impressed by a production because somebody famous was staged, but I see, for example, it is wrong, or dancers are going into wrong direction, and people around me were telling me for years that why don't you start your own competition? But I also had my own school at the time. I said, oh no, that's a huge enterprise, and difficult. I find it exciting, but it's difficult. And no. And then, well, I had a hip replacement. I actually had 2 hip replacements. So after first surgery, I had nothing to do. I was lying down in bed. You cannot get up and walk. It's like allowed just a little bit. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll start my own competition. And I started a few months later. I organized, and the reason was, that's how I made decision, but the reason was I wanted to do something right and ask judges to look more pure, more artistic, and not to be impressed by incredible technique abilities, because now dancers they can do anything and everything. I can't remember anyone, seriously speaking, unless somebody impresses me with something else. So this is why I started, and for me it's a huge celebration, like and also I always ask like directors when they come, I always say that you have to contribute to young generation. So scholarships, apprenticeships, company contracts, it's very important, sort of like putting things together to help young generations, because I don't think there's a lot of, sadly to say, coaching, not teaching, coaching, and the history is lost, and history is lost. Actually, also sad to say.
What would you like to see with that, with the history, like improving, like what would you like to see American ballet schools do more of to help with that?
When I came here, Lucy Chase was director of VKIBC, and of course Balanchine was alive, and Robert Joffrey and Arpino. And I've seen with those three major companies in New York, there was substance, and whatever those choreographers and directors did. ABT was a company of course, company on itself, and then there were stars, which also created excitement, and stars were coming from different countries, different companies, so it's always something like new. So it was quite interesting at times. Cynthia Gregory, Martin was dancing, Bohones was dancing. There were like so many beautiful dancers, and Balanchine, of course, completely different story with symphonic ballets with Robert Joffrey and Arpina, the beauty of choreography and the message behind was quite interesting for me. And I felt, unfortunately, after Lushichay stepped out, Baryshnikov took over, was also a good time because he started to discover American dancers. But then when he stepped out, things started to change. Also, when Balanchine passed away, there was a period in the company I entered during this period, New York City Ballet, when everybody were very down and depressed. It was a period of some sort of unknown, and things started to change. And then the last after that, Joffrey Ballet moved to Chicago, so New York City lost another good company. I kind of want New York City to be back the center of the universe in the art world and ballet world, because it was exciting for me to be here. Yeah. I could have chosen any place in Europe, but I want to be in the US because there's three different companies. Even I wasn't part all of them, but partially I was with City Ballet, etc. But it was interesting to go and see Joffrey pieces, or and of course there's a contemporary company. So it was something like very, I would say, interesting. Like for me, it was always mysterious, new, avant-garde, and yet there was a substance. That's what I would like to see. So how it has to be done, I think that we need to write another book, you and I. Let's write a book, okay. What else? What other tricky question you want to ask? So now I'm interviewed by
I know. I remember you telling me a little bit about like dancing with Balanchine and when you came to New York, is that where you wanted to go right away? Was New York City Ballet and work there, or was it just sort of worked out that way?
It worked unexpectedly.
Okay.
Because for almost close to 2 years, I was not sure actually. I didn't find Bolshoi here. And I came from Bolshoi, product of Bolshoi, great institution and all of it. And so I perform as a guest a lot, and also in Europe. And I decided on Australia because they had fantastic rep, where I actually danced Balanchine and Robbins, and Glenn Tatley from here, and I was Bijara and Petin and Crank and many others. And it was kind of easy transformation for me to get from the life I knew, where everything was certain, to life where nothing is certain. It's up to you, and you don't have your entourage of coaches and advisors. So it was easy to get into it, and I think that's when the change happened in me, because rather than resisting like new for me choreography, I accepted while maintaining my classical background. And then I was invited by George and Balanchine to come to New York and audition for On Your Toes.
Okay.
And they chose me right away. I went back to Australia because I still had a contract. and I said that I cannot come the time they wanted me to come because I have to finish contract with Australian Ballet, and Australian Ballet I told that I will not sign for a third season with Australia, which was sad because I like the company, I love the country too, and but there were new horizons, and to do Broadway show I didn't speak even that good of English. I think still it was kind of like, but this role is a talking role and also dancing role with Balanchine classical ballet and jazz. So I was working with Luigi, jazz teacher, like personal, and I love this man. I love it because I said I never danced jazz before. As a matter of fact, I mean, I didn't know much about jazz. I mean, of course, I've heard the music, but I didn't know the nuances of jazz, right? And he told me something very interesting. He said, "You see this classical, like, Epperman?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "This isn't jazz. It's just like with specific, almost sensuality." And it hit me right away. So it's always where discoveries of something new, and I guess I always was attracted to new discoveries, like going bold into that, because everything was new, like I really wanted to do it. And Balanchine during that time had a talk with me how to interpret acting role, because I played a capricious prima ballerina, Russian prima ballerina whatsoever, and George Balanchine wanted to be a certain way, almost hysterical, and Balanchine was reminding me, do you remember, not do you remember, of course I didn't remember, I wasn't born yet. He said Imperial Russia wasn't like that. Yeah, maybe they were capricious, but they wouldn't go level below. So there's a certain, again, elegance and substance. And I took his advice, and that's how it worked for me on Your Toes, and was received very well. And during that time, George Balanchine invited me to join the company, and I said no. and I guess I was young, so I just said, I don't think I can. That's what I said. And he said, why? And that was like, it's always this phrase will stay with me. And I said, it's so different. I mean, because I know I do succeed in the classics. It's almost a cup of tea for me to do it. And all those big dramatic ballets, because I was taught how to be an actress on stage, and feel, of course. And I didn't think just like, so to speak, like empty steps, which are beautiful. His ballets are incredible, I loved. But I didn't find that I can fit in. I come from dramatic ballets and all of it. And he said very simple, be yourself, I'll be around. I was like, oh. And he said, let me know when you want to do it. I said, well, I have a contract now with On Your Toes. And he said, okay, give me a call. And after a certain period of time when I played On Your Toes, I realized that I came here to dance. I actually want to learn. And so called to New York City Ballet, to Balanchine, his assistant Barbara Horgan, and that was it. So I defected end of '79, so I joined the company in '83.
Okay.
So it took some time, but in the meantime, I learned so many things already.
Right.
So that was another step. That was an interesting journey.
Yeah, you've done a lot.
Yeah, I've done a lot. Still doing Audrey says, like, you're all over the places.
I can't believe it. Teaching at what, 8:30 or 9 o'clock in Long Island City for Joffrey, and then private lessons, and then this, and then the book,
and traveling,
and the competition, which I'm thinking about Alona Copen. I don't know if you remember her. did publicity for that for years, and then Valentina was one of the judges and then president of the jury. And I told Valentina, who does everything herself, a lot herself, that, you know, Ilona, when it was getting toward competition time, I'm sorry, I'm having a excessive ride pick me up, that's why I have to watch this. Ilona had an office, well, it was a little bigger than this. She had 8 people in that room, and one was doing the hotel, and one was doing the transportation, and I mean, she had a whole staff of people who each had a job, and Valentina does it all by herself, almost all by herself.
Yeah.
And she doesn't sleep, and it's amazing.
Well, you know, as I said to somebody, like maybe it was brutal, I said, we have enough time to sleep under.
No.
So right now that we have to be on the move. I mean, if you have sort of like a drive to be present in this life, right? As long as it lasts, I think that's Of course, I get tired, but excitement I think prevails now. So.
Yeah.